to something else because we have another subject we got to talk about. That was the first subject. Ilhan Omar is on our side. Guess what? Ilhan Omar is on our side over here. She understands sanctions, fam. And I say this all the time. Sanctions kill. Because I really don't think that the everyday American people understand what sanctions are. They think that it's like a little smack on the hand, like you're just misbehaving, and we're going to put this little small sanction on you. No, in actuality, sanctions kill. And they mostly kill the poorest citizens of that sanctioned country. I have over here, Venezuela crisis. Former UN rapporteur says U.S. sanctions kill citizens. And it says, we got a little bit written over here, the first UN rapporteur to visit, am I saying that word right, by the way? Rapporteur? Yeah. Rapporteur to visit Venezuela in 21 years has told the independent U.S. Sanctions on the country are illegal and could amount to crimes against humanity under international law. The former special rapporteur, Alfred de Zayas, who finished his term at the UN in March, has criticized the U.S. for engaging in an economic warfare, fam. And that's where it all starts out. And this was against Venezuela, in which he said is hurting the economy and killing Venezuelans. Sanctions kill, he told The Independent, adding that they fall mostly heavily on the poorest people in society, demonstrably cause. What's that? Sorry. Say that word for me.
Which one?
Demonstrably cause death through food and medicine shortages, lead to violations of human rights, and are aimed at coercing economic change in a sister democracy. Okay, so the people who have the money in these countries, fam, they're okay. You know what I'm saying? And I found a video that was pretty neutral. And I want to break it down in regards to what's really going on in Venezuela right now today. Because it all started in 1999 with sanctions, okay? And it didn't happen overnight. And now I also want to show you my quick post that I put up with Johnny Pesto over here, okay? And I made a little post that I said, here's America's playbook for regime change. Check it out. Number one, we locate a country fruitful of natural resources. 2, we apply sanctions and create an economic crisis. 3, we fund the opposition with tax dollars. 4, we act like we care and we offer humanitarian aid, in which we know we smuggle weapons in. And 5, we call for the democratically elected leader to step down. 6, we install our puppet. 7, we steal that country's natural resources for corporate gains, not for our people. And 8, we find the next country, rinse and repeat. Fam, hands off.
That is a
Venezuela.
a literal perfect example, step by step, of what we do. And if people don't want to believe that yet, that's fine. That's their prerogative. But we're going to keep pushing truth out there because that's exactly what we do. And you know, I grew up thinking that America was trying to spread democracy. That's what they teach you in school.
Yeah.
History is always the lessons of the winners. It's never the truth. And, you know, I think we need to start changing that narrative. So.
Okay, so we got this little video, and this video is kind of cool because once again, I want to concentrate today on sanctions. That was the playbook, and the first 2 parts we're going to explain, we're going to show you. So let's get this video up. We're going to start at 13 seconds. Johnny Pesto, he's getting it ready, and we're going to get it rolling. We're going to stop it along the way, and we're going to explain this as it goes. So here we go, 13 seconds.
Separate category of trade restrictions are those that are not economically but rather politically motivated. Such restrictions are referred to as economic sanctions. Economic sanctions differ from protectionist policies in that they're not intended to protect the economic interests of the domestic producer, but rather they use economic penalties in an effort to punish a target country. Economic sanctions are used when there are political, moral, or ideological differences between countries. The end goal of the sanctions is to make the target country change its behavior.
Okay, so first off, fam, here we are.
Wow.
What is the behavior back in 1999 that we wanted Hugo Chavez to change when we imposed the first bit of sanctions? I mean, the behavior is, we found that fruitful country full of olive oil, full of crude oil, full of gold, full of minerals. Okay, so we want that now. So we want him to let us in, our corporations in, and we want to use that oil for military gain, for political gain. So the differences were political, they're moral, and they're also ideological, fam, because I keep on saying this all the time. We talk about this all the time. It's a socialist government. The United States elites do not want the citizens of America to see a socialistic government work. They don't want people to see the citizens getting health care. They don't want to see the people getting education. They don't want to see the people getting assistance whatsoever, because if they see it successful, then the American people might want it themselves.
And let me add to that. The colonizers don't want to see their colonized areas, the ones where they invaded, to be successful, because we'll see a form of social democracy, democratic socialism in the Netherlands. But we don't see that same thing in South America, because the implications are much greater when it's a third world country, quote unquote, having success in socialism. And we just can't allow that.
Yeah. So let's run this next part right here, and we'll just show you, too, some of the reasons why we push sanctions.
This could be anything from releasing a political prisoner to halting human rights abuses to giving up nuclear weapons development or even changing an entire political regime.
Right there, fam. So isn't it funny that it's the last one, to changing a political regime? I mean, the first one they're showing right now, they're trying to kind of paint sanctions as a positive thing. Like, if you remember Nelson Mandela, the international community imposed sanctions on South Africa to release Nelson Mandela, and eventually they caved into the sanctions, and Nelson Mandela ended up becoming the president after he was released in apartheid state. However, when you see this up over here, there are no human rights violations in Venezuela. There are no political prisoners. Venezuela doesn't have fucking nuclear weapons. But the fourth choice is they want a whole regime removed. And that's what they were doing. I mean, it was funny that we supported Juan Guaido and we want the other regime to go.
Yeah, and Guaido is a right-wing guy. I mean, he's not... Why do you think Pence was in communication with him? As soon as Pence got off the phone with him, that's when he started going. That's when he started to get going. So if you guys don't see the connection in there it is. Democrats supporting our interventionism in Venezuela are actually working in collusion with the Republicans, who are also doing the same thing.
Debbie Wasserman Schultz, not mentioning any names. Let's go to the next one. Let's run this baby.
Sanctions can take many forms, but typically they involve a boycott of the target country or an asset freeze. If your country refuses to do business directly with the target, then you're practicing a primary boycott. This could mean refusing to buy products from the target, like refusing to buy oil from Iraq, and or refusing to sell products to the target, like refusing to sell weapons to Afghanistan.
Okay, so that's what we did next, fam, is we directly applied sanctions from our country to Venezuela. And you can see right here, the first set of sanctions mean that Venezuela could lose up to $1 billion in loans from the international financial institutions, such as the Inter-American Development Bank for $750 million for a hydroelectric plant, and projects aimed to clean drinking water and Amazon rainforest protection and the judicial reform. So that was the first time we started slapping sanctions, because there's two different types of sanctions. There's broad sanctions and there's narrow sanctions. So we started narrowly, and we kept on applying more sanctions, applying more sanctions, applying more sanctions. We also refused to buy their oil at one point. Mm-hmm. Went to our buddies in Saudi Arabia, and they helped us out, which will lead us to the next part of the sanctions. Fam, you have anything to say about the first part?
The third part, you mean?
Well, the first part of the sanctions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, fam.
All right, so now we got us putting sanctions on there, but there's more to sanctions, because what we do is we get our friends involved, fam, and we really beat up on them.
There are also secondary boycotts, where your country not only refuses to do business with the target, but also refuses to do business with any other country that continues to do business with the target. If you can cut off the country from its friends, the punishment from the sanctions is more likely to get the desired result.
Okay, so that's exactly what we did now. Now we joined our friends into the boycott, our friendly governments, to really put a chokehold on Maduro. I have a little article up over here. I'll show you it real quick. But what happened recently was Maduro, he couldn't buy insulin because we had our banks boycott the use of his electrical funds. So he couldn't transfer the $7.5 million he needed to purchase that insulin from Canada for poor people in need. Once again. And then in 2017, there was a malaria outbreak in the Amazon region. Maduro tried to purchase the anti-malaria medication from the neighboring Colombia. But Colombia, being friend to the United States government, said no. So Maduro had to spend an enormous amount of money and wait an enormous amount of time to fly the medications in from India. So what we do is we kind of join in all our friends, and it's usually the same suspects, the usual suspects, fam. France, England, whatnot, because take a look at this right now. We're going to run this real quick, and I'm going to show you something else that we just did recently, which was the ultimate knife in the heart of Maduro and the poor people of Venezuela. Run it to 210.
A sanction doesn't have to involve trades of goods and services. In fact, another type of sanction is to freeze the financial assets of the target. This can be very effective, particularly if the sanctioner is a country with a high degree of financial services, which attracts a lot of international assets. Economic sanctions have met with varying degrees of success over the years in terms of achieving the end goal of changing the target's behavior.
Changing the target's behavior, fam. And look at this, fam. We talk about seizing assets. We call up our friends in England, the Bank of England, and just recently they blocked Maduro from taking $1.2 million to gold, to withdraw his gold. Okay, starving the people, cutting off money, cutting off aid, cutting off medication, cutting off food. That's what we do. We try to create this economic crisis within. So now the people fighting with each other, and then we keep come on in and we start applying the opposition with weapons, and that's where we are today, fam, in Venezuela.
And we're bullies. That's literally bullying and manipulating situations to where we become the saviors, where, oh, Venezuela needs our help. Venezuela only needs our help because we screwed them over in the first place.
Yeah, we started this 20 years ago, 1999, with those first bit of sanctions. Bush and Chavez had their own personal battles. And let me tell you something, Madam Secretary Hillary Clinton, she followed along the same policies as the Bush administration, and that's why we are here today. They couldn't get money from banks for loans to drill their own oil. We used the Saudis to lower the price of their oil to screw them over. We did everything we could to, and once again, Hillary Clinton admits the role in Honduran coup, but we'll get to that in 1 second. Let's run this real quick because that's just one country. This is the last bit of this sanctions video I want to run real quick, just till 3:04, baby.
Look at one of the United States' longest standing and most public examples, U.S. sanctions on Cuba. In the late 1950s, Fidel Castro rose to power in Cuba. The U.S. initially took action by refusing to sell arms to Cuba, then by refusing to sell any exports to Cuba, and then refusing to purchase any goods from Cuba. What was the end goal? Democratization, that is, overthrowing Cuba's communist government. How effective were the sanctions? Well, after 50 years, Fidel was still in power, and by the time he died in November 2016, he had groomed his brother Raul to take the helm. You'd think that if any country could scare a target straight by way of economic sanctions, it would be the world's largest economy, the United States. But after 50 years of sanctions, the stated goal had not been achieved. Why do you suppose that is?
Time to think, fam. Time to think. You know, some countries, they have resolved. And let's get this something straight here, fam. Cuba doesn't have a homeless problem like the United States does. Cuba's citizens enjoy free health care. Cuba's citizens get a higher education. You know what I'm saying? So why are we trying to cripple these countries with sanctions? Our elites don't want you seeing socialism works. That is why the DOJ and the FBI helped jail Lula da Silva in Brazil. That is why we removed that coup in Honduras when Manuel Zelaya, Hillary Clinton did it. A socialistic government was removed because all we want to do is make sure that our elites, our corporations make money. You know what I'm saying? And these sanctions in Venezuela and the U.S. intentions are not what they seem to be. Okay, the U.S. is getting some criticisms saying that these sanctions really harm the Venezuelan people, and it's a human rights violation.
It absolutely is, and Venezuela is literally one example. You've named several other countries, and we continue to do this, and we have other countries next on our radar as well.
We do. We got Cuba on the radar. We got Haiti on the
Again.
radar. I mean, we've been messing around with these countries for years. It's time we start speaking the lies that are going out there. And fam, that's just something I love doing about this show, is because, we might not be as popular as Jimmy Dore or somebody else yet, but we are part of the mice squeaking against that avalanche. And if you're out there, if you're a truth teller, squeak, replay this video, talk these truths. We need to keep saying this over and over and over again. We have to stop this naturalistic lie that we're out there spreading democracy. No, we want their natural resources. The corporate elites want that oil. They want that gold. Chavez didn't want to give it to them, and now Maduro's hanging on for life. And guess what? We're already hiring Mr. Evil Geppetto. John Bolton says the trioca of evil. He's talking about Cuba next. Yeah. He's talking about Haiti next.
They vilify them, so you hate them too.
Yeah,
and they use a humanitarian facade, a Trojan horse of giving people goods in order to continue their diabolic mission. And it's not an exaggeration. I mean, that is what we do. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because right now in America we have the biggest wealth inequality in a first world country. It is ridiculous how all the top wealth is concentrated on the 1%, and everybody else is barely getting by. And so that's why people like Tulsi Gabbard are amazing when they speak truth on foreign policy. She said, decisions by presidents who do not understand foreign policy or who lack the temperament or foresight to make wise and careful dissorts result in suffering and death and the decimation of communities abroad and at home as we bankrupt our country to pay for unnecessary war. So not only are we hurting those nations, but we're also hurting the majority of our nation, who we're telling that all the things they want, Medicare for all, higher wages, free public education, child care, a Green New Deal, is they can't pay for it because all of our resources, our attention, and our money is going to hurting other people in other countries, and yet saying we are the greatest country in the world, spreading democracy.
Johnny, can you put my message up that we did again too? Because I wonder if you can get to it really quick, because I want to kind of piggyback on what Fam just said over there, because it's so true. We talk about this all the time. Look at number 3. And this is what people don't understand. This shit's being funded with our tax money. They're using these advocacy groups to say, oh, the Center for Latin Freedom, and they're putting in 900 million or 90 million or whatever it is, and they're spreading it out and opposing the opposition in Nicaragua, or opposing the opposition in Venezuela, and now opposing the opposition in Haiti. And we're paying for it all. We also paid... and the DOJ has had such influence in Brazil now. This is coming out of our dollars. What happened to the Donald Trump who said he was a non-interventionist, that he wasn't going to go down this path, that we're wasting money in stupid wars that he said the other day?
He was draining the swamp.
Meanwhile, he's doing his own private fucking war out there. Fam, it's disgusting. We got to get on to Bernie, because if we talk about this stuff, I'll lose more than my voice. I will lose my marbles, fam.